You man, you already know what it is, and if you don't, pause the video right now, smack shut your mind to come make this video and smash that like button, man. Back with another video, back with something different this time. You know, I told you guys we were going to start reacting to different things on this channel, and I hope you guys can support me for it, because we're getting deep now. We're getting really into the journey of life and understanding what's going on, what's the problem. We got to check out this Thomas Sowell video right here, the truth about Black Americans being stolen from Africa.
Challenged on the historical accuracy of roots, Haley said, "I tried to give my people a myth to live by." Contrary to the myths to live by, created by Alex Haley and others, Africans were by no means the innocents portrayed in Roots, baffled as to why white men were coming in and taking their people away in chains. On the contrary, the region of West Africa from which Kunta Kinte supposedly came was one of the great slave trading regions of the continent, before, during, and after the white man arrived. It was Africans who enslaved their fellow Africans, selling some of these slaves to Europe.
And this is the thing I was talking about. People told me that African people enslaved their own people. White man just came and perfected it. And as black people, as black community, as me, I'm a black person from the black community. We don't want to look at it like that because of what we read in a movie, what we read in the books, what we've seen in the movies, what we've been told, what history was telling us. So he basically gave us a myth to live by, and nobody ever talks about Africans owning their own people. And then when the white man came, whoever this was came, and he perfected it better than the Africans that enslaved their own people. That's how I look at it.
Europeans, it was Africa during and after the white man arrived. It was Africans who enslaved their fellow Africans, selling some of these slaves to Europeans or to Arabs and keeping others for themselves. Even at the peak of the Atlantic slave trade, Africans retained more slaves for themselves than they sent to the Western Hemisphere.
Yo, see?
This pattern was not confined to West Africa, from which most slaves were sent to the Western Hemisphere. In East Africa, the Maasai were feared slave raiders, and other African tribes, either alone or in conjunction with Arabs, enslaved their more vulnerable neighbors. As late as 1891, it was reported that Manyuema slavers had demoralized surrounding tribes, destroying crops, and famine reigned everywhere. Even in the early 20th century, Abyssinians were still raiding other Africans and carrying off slaves.
But that's the thing. Like, even from back then till now, it's still the same. I can go outside and be a black person that don't fuck with me for no reason, but if they had an opportunity to enslave people that were weak and people that weren't able to think for themselves, they would do it. That's kind of, to me, that's what I look at as the gangs are. Like, gangs in the neighborhood and stuff, I feel like they taking all the people that don't have no role model, no male influence, family members to look out for. I feel like the OGs bringing the younger people, just like how the LGBT community doing. I feel like they do that and then put them in a gang, get them a gun, tell them to do a few things to be part of the family, blood in, blood out. That's how it really be sometimes. Like, gangs really be against police and regular civilians. They don't really give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? They don't care if you're not out here doing the same thing they doing. They just out here to just do nut shit. And it's that simple. And a lot of people not going to want to hear that, especially coming from a black man.
It was 1922 before the British had gained sufficient control in Tanganyika to stamp out slavery there. Arabs were the leading slave raiders in East Africa, ranging over an area larger than all of Europe. The total number of slaves exported from East Africa during the 19th century has been estimated to be at least 2 million. Despite the impression created by Roots, during the era of the massive slave trade from West Africa, a white man was more likely to catch malaria in Africa than to catch slaves himself.
Damn.
The average life expectancy of a white man in the interior of sub-Saharan Africa at that time was less than 1 year. By and large, men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere came to the coasts of Africa, bought their slaves, and left as soon as possible. Even so, the death rates among the white crews of the ships carrying slaves to the Western Hemisphere were as high as the death rates among the slaves themselves.
Yo, that's wild, crazy. So, with them, a lot of the black people were able to live with that shit. What is it, malaria, he said? And some white passengers that were on the boat above it still were getting sick and couldn't last long at living and having that. So that's something that you know that as a white person, that if you catch that, that's severe. Like you gotta go get checked the fuck out. And ain't no trying to say you got to fight that and none of that shit. That's something you really gotta go check out. Wow, I never knew that. So basically they gave us the Roots movie for something to live by and indoctrinate that into our minds to think that's the truth. Only the Europeans had slaves, only white people had slaves, and they not going to talk about how the black people had slaves first in Africa. They just not going to talk about it.
The Western Hemisphere were as high as the death rates among the slaves themselves. It was only much later, after quinine and other medical measures enabled Europeans to survive where there were tropical diseases, was it possible for them to invade Africa in force and establish empires there. But by then, the Atlantic slave trade had already been ended.
Damn.
During the era of that trade, Africa was largely ruled by Africans, who established the conditions under which slave sales took place. The crew of a slave ship was in no position to defy African rulers and their armies by going out across the land and capturing people willy-nilly. The stronger African peoples captured and enslaved the weaker peoples. The same pattern found over the centuries in Europe, Asia, the Western Hemisphere, and Polynesia.
Everybody got slaves. It's just that a lot of black people hang on to this slavery shit as a crutch so that they could do the bare minimum. They don't want to exceed expectations, because why not be able to just chill back and just blame something that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago? It make me feel a lot better. A lot of people can't take accountability of their own lives and strive to be better. And it's sad. And that's what a lot of people need to learn in the black community. And the black community just got to remember, at the end of the day, we're a human collective. We're really all the same. Not them elites. We're not Hollywood people. We don't get to go up and smack people in their face and just walk off and everything be okay. We're civilians. We have to stick together, all of us. Every single one of us, bro. No matter the color, no matter the race. That's why I'm building this community, bro. White, black, Spanish, anything, bro. Like, we just people, man, that just understand life than just trying to get sucked in and just believe everything that we see on the news or everything we read in the history books, because the history book is lies. They only gave us the bare minimum, what they wanted to know, because they don't want us to reach our peak in life. They want us to stay dumb humans.
Yeah. In Nyassa land, the Ngoni and Yall swaggered over and terrorized other tribes. In Uganda, the Baganda made life miserable for their neighbors. And the Nyoro and Hima of Anko enslaved Toro women and children. The Tutsi dominated the Hutu in Rwanda. The Maasai lorded it over the Kikuyu and Kamba. And the latter, in turn, held the Indorobo in a kind of serfdom. It was precisely the fact that Europeans, except for the Portuguese, seldom participated in the raids that captured and enslaved Africans that enabled most people in Europe and the Americas to remain oblivious to the traumatic experience that this was, with some Africans committing suicide to avoid capture and wives being whipped as they tried to cling to their husbands or children. Historian David Breon Davis pointed out that Europeans had little contact with the actual process of enslavement, and that as late as 1721, the Royal African Company asked its agents to investigate the modes of enslavement in the interior. Europeans typically saw only the end results, enslaved people being offered for sale on the coast. It was much the same story in the Ottoman Empire, where those who bought slaves had no idea what these slaves had been through before.
Damn, so right there you go. Black people had slaves before anybody. The Europeans just successfully mastered it better than they did. And African people had slaves first. Like, get that through your minds. Like, stop hanging on to that. You know, slavery this, slavery that. You keep hanging on to that, you're never going to get to the level of life that you're supposed to, because you're stuck in a year, and you're stuck in a time where you weren't even there. You just hear stories, you hear this, you hear that, and that's for you to feel bad, you know, feel bad all the time, and then you hate somebody else and have a crutch to make you feel good about yourself, when in reality, life is not that no more. Everybody has slaves. Everybody been through stuff. Jewish people been through the shit with Hitler. You know, everybody been through their own trauma. People back in the day, that was their trauma they had. Our trauma, what we had was the quarantine, the pandemic situations and shit like that. That's what our thing. Everybody has things that they have to go through, and they have to stay strong and stay 10 toes easily to way to get to the press, especially if you're using social media nowadays. People believe memes before they even believe a book or believe somebody that been around those times. Roots was basically just something that was for people, black people, to feel sorry about and then go out there and then blame somebody else for all the other mistakes that they created in their own life without even being a white person that's living next door to them or the person that's a co-worker or some shit like that. But I don't want to hold up you guys too much time. I already know it's like 11 minutes in, so you already know what it is. Your boy rocking the building. Drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out till next time. Peace.